A little backstory before I begin. I am currently on a medical leave of absence for mental health at a prestigious college, which I got into on my own academic merit. My parents, particularly my dad, have been financially supporting my college education for the past 4 years. I only have a few classes left to finish and have been working this summer to be reinstated for the next term of school. I have goals that I have been trying to meet. I meet them pretty consistently, but my perfectionist mindset can cause me to lose confidence in myself if I miss a day. One mistake can cause me to think that I will never be able to get out of this mental rut. I have gotten better at not viewing mistakes through the perfectionist lens, but it still happens from time to time. One day, I was gaming in my room, and my dad did his daily check-in with me. He usually asks me how I'm doing and what I did that day, to which I answer, and then he leaves. Sometimes he could talk for a couple of hours, rarely ever giving me an opportunity to talk. These were the worst because he really made no opportunity to understand me at all, always saying I was making excuses. I have never blamed anyone but myself for my issues, but somehow I have been making excuses. However, this particular day, he thought the way in which I answered was disrespectful, as if I was implying that he should leave me alone. It's important to state here that I am not a disrespectful person. I listen to my parents. I even respect strangers, even if they disrespect me. He said it was my tone, which I don't think I had, but nevertheless, I tried to remedy the issue by explicitly stating that I was not trying to be disrespectful. I don't think it had an effect though, because his tone and facial expression didn't change. He then said maybe I should have some more goals, such as, and I quote, dusting the small area in front of my television. In my head, I'm like, what? Doing that is meaningless. So I tell him that the task is inconsequential to me. He still insisted upon it, and because I disagreed, he started using my pitfalls from the past few years against me, trying to apply them to this situation, which I didn't think was appropriate. So I started to defend myself. It turned into a small argument where I repeated a lot of the things he said so he could clearly understand my points. He claims I was mimicking him, something I simply don't do. He took great offense to that. I responded by saying, I'm not mimicking. Mimicking is not something I do. Again, this had no effect. I didn't understand why my dad was feeling disrespected and being so hostile because I told him I'm not trying to be disrespectful in any capacity. I was really hurt by his combative use of my issues against me. I told him, that doesn't make sense to me. That really set him off. Did you just say I didn't make any sense? As if I literally meant he was speaking gibberish, another misunderstanding. I didn't respond because at this point he would find any angle to feel disrespected. He then, in a very commanding tone, instructed me to turn off the PlayStation, which I was still playing while talking to him. Not having eye contact is typical for the conversations I have with him because I'm still listening. In my head, I'm thinking, what did I do to deserve this? I felt like he did it to put me in my place. Weird, considering how much effort I had been making to defuse the situation. Then, I made a mistake. I didn't turn off the PlayStation. I just sat there in silence. He then proceeded to smack me in the head. I have been beaten by my dad before when I had done something grievously wrong. This time was different though. He had been ignoring my attempts to defuse the situation and betrayed me. From all of this, I get a smack in the head? No idiots here, that's not fair in the slightest, so I pushed him away from me and said, man, I didn't do anything wrong. He then says, did you just raise your hand at me? I can't make this up. He then tried to come at me again, but this time I rushed him because I wasn't going to allow that again. Another thing I shouldn't have done out of respect for him as my dad. I'm not even a fighter. My little brother tried to intervene to no avail. I didn't throw any punches or anything, but I managed to pin him to the floor. In that moment, I was more confused and sad than anything. I kept telling him that I didn't do anything wrong. Eventually, I got up and he said, I crossed the line big time. Again, I said I didn't do anything wrong. He then proceeded to demean me, saying I couldn't even finish college and that I was lazy. I felt and still feel so hurt by those comments, so I told him he has never helped me at all, referring to the talks he would give me. He then took all my devices and left. We didn't talk for a few days. I really wanted things to return to normal, so I tried to break the stalemate by sending a text about how I feel we should talk and how I was feeling in the moment. I found the phone and took it just to write the text, then put it back. I took extra care in writing, even to the point of having my mom review it before I sent it. She wasn't home during the altercation. One morning, he returns the phone, saying that I would need it to communicate with others. He also said he had read my text and would talk to me about it when he was ready. I was thinking, things are turning around. We are finally going to have a real conversation. A few days went by, and I would constantly see him relaxing, watching television or something. Clearly available to talk. Eager to make amends, I asked him one day if he was ready to talk. He said yes. So I walked in and sat down. I had already talked to my mom about it, and she convinced me to apologize for getting physical with him in the first place. Initially, the only thing I really thought I did wrong was not listening, even though I had justification. In retrospect, just listening prevents the whole relationship fracture from occurring to this extent. Unfortunately, the talk did not go how I thought it would. Considering he had read my text, maybe he had some understanding of where I was coming from. Wrong. In summary, all he did was say that I crossed the line by getting physical with him. He told me he never raised his hand at his dad back in Africa, even though his dad did things that would be considered abuse today. Even if he believed his dad was wrong, he would never do it. As for the text I sent him, he thought it was hilarious. Essentially, there is no possible reason to ever get physical with your dad. He mentioned maybe if the child was always being abused and just got fed up, then they would be justified. I could also argue the opposite is true. If a parent beats their child for good reasons, but then does it when the child feels unjustified, won't the child be more inclined to defend themselves? At this point, I still hadn't said anything, but was visibly very frustrated with what was being said. As a means to just move on, I told him he was right. He is always right, no matter what. How I feel doesn't matter, so I will not express myself to you anymore. He didn't want to hear that, though, as he started to be condescending, acting like what he just did failed to acknowledge where he could have and did go wrong. Nothing, before me, not listening to turn off the PlayStation, mattered. I got up in frustration because that was completely unfair. I wanted to avoid any kind of argument so he didn't start feeling disrespected by the things I say. Unfortunately, it devolved into one. Luckily, my mom was in the house and came to intervene. This was huge for me. Now I had someone to witness what I was dealing with. The conversation went very similarly to the initial one. He was selectively misinterpreting or literally misinterpreting things I said to feel disrespected, but this time my mom was there to support. Not that she chose a side, because she saw flaws with what I did during the situation as well, but it was so clear that my dad was choosing not to understand me. We corrected him so many times as he constantly tried to fish for ways to be disrespected. A lot of things were said, and nothing was resolved. He simply refused to acknowledge that he did anything wrong, even though in that very moment he was doing what caused me to not listen in the first place. He even tried to accuse me of having my hands on his neck, which is not true. I pinned him. I didn't choke him. He said if I got physical again, he would beat me very hard because he is from Africa and didn't know I was capable of doing something like that to him. It's the fact that he feels so victimized to even say that, which is astounding. In the text, I told him I didn't throw punches or slaps and just tried to pin him to stop him from aggressing, but he disregarded that when he was having his laugh while reading it, shaking my head. Because he was certain that he wasn't going to change his mind, he got tired of the conversation and said that the argument was my fault. Remember, he is the one that brought this up. Then I told him that he agreed to the conversation, so trying to say this all started because of me is simply not true. Then I told him, by saying it's all my fault, he is implying that I commanded him to have this conversation. Guess what he said? Did you just say you commanded me to have this conversation? He even got up like he was about to come at me through my mom. We were shocked. That is not what I said at all. He then said that the point of who started it wasn't important anyway. Really? We didn't even bring it up. Eventually, I started talking with my mom in front of him since he decided to remove himself from the conversation. I recalled the initial situation to her. Selectively, my dad decided to speak again, visibly more upset than before. He tried to say I was lying because he would never be aggressive for no reason, because then he would be at fault. Then I asked him to recall the situation if I was lying. He said when he walked in, my body language was disrespectful. I don't even know how that can be. My body language was disrespectful? I was just sitting there, playing the game. He never told me to change my sitting position. And apparently, that is enough for him to try to discipline me. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Honestly, I could keep going with all the selective things my dad did, but I am honestly getting tired of writing all this stuff down. In the end, he still didn't recognize my feelings, even though I did with his. My mom thinks that we have to pray about this situation, but I believe my dad is too stubborn and conceited for the relationship to be repaired. I had to secretly record the ending part of the conversation because I'm thinking I need more opinions from people close to me. No more my word versus his word, just straight video evidence. I think the evidence leans heavily in my favor. I could have never imagined I would be in this situation with my dad. It was almost as if he wanted me to disrespect him by the way he was selectively choosing to feel disrespected. I know it's my perspective, but I try to be truthful and acknowledge what both sides did wrong. Unfortunately, my dad will try to make me believe I am a problem child. 90% of my life, I have been a respectful and obedient child. So for my dad to truly believe I was outright disrespecting him might be proof he has no idea who I am at all, which is hard to believe. Nothing before I actually started doing disrespectful things matters. Why I may have acted differently than my usual self doesn't matter. A similar situation occurred when I was first preparing to come home from school, but it was over the phone. I said some things I shouldn't have said, but he never figured it might be because of the fact that he is telling me to leave a large suitcase full of my belongings behind in order to catch a plane. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. It's time to move out. Your dad is hurtful, and he feels inherently threatened by you growing into an adult who wants to do things his own way. To be frank, everything you write, I can feel your desire to get into open conflict with your dad through the screen. My guess is that you are mad about how he treats you and want to have it out, but are behaving in a passive-aggressive way because he cannot hear any disagreement without turning violent and nasty. He can also sense that desire from you, which is why he's getting violent and nasty anyway, because he is hurtful. It's not healthy for you to keep tamping this feeling down, and it won't solve things, which is why you need to get out. Comment 2. I understand there are cultural differences at play here, but your dad is a bully. You are an adult and just as entitled as him to be treated with respect. And there are no good reasons for a parent to beat their child. I'm not suggesting you say any of this to him, as it will likely only make him angry. But I think it's time to start working toward being financially independent so that you can move out. Once there is some physical distance between you and your dad, you can decide what boundaries to draw and how much of a relationship you want to have with him. Now, for the update. It's been a week since the argument with my dad. My mom suggested we all go out for dinner to ease the tension, and we ended up at a local Italian restaurant with a cozy atmosphere. My dad arrived late, looking tense, but tried to act normal. I noticed my dad kept glancing at his phone during dinner. He finally put his phone down when my mom asked him to focus. The conversation started light, but quickly shifted to school. My dad mentioned how he hoped I would consider a different career path. My sister Kate, always trying to keep the peace, tried to change the subject to our favorite family recipes. While discussing the recipes, my dad suddenly interrupted. He brought up the fight from a week ago. My dad accused me of being overly sensitive and not taking responsibility. My mom tried to mediate, reminding him about my mental health struggles. Dad dismissed her, insisting I needed to toughen up. I could see my brother Jake and sister Kate exchanging worried glances. Jake finally spoke up, saying we should all focus on moving forward. Dad shot him a look, making it clear he didn't appreciate the interruption. The conversation became heated, and I decided to excuse myself to the bathroom. While in there, I overheard my parents arguing quietly. My mom mentioned my mental health in a way that sounded defensive. Dad brought up my college situation again, saying I was wasting time. I replied that I was working hard to get back. My dad insisted that I had no real plan and was just playing games. I let it slip that I had been recording our previous conversations. Dad looked shocked, and everyone went silent again. My mom asked me why I would do that, looking concerned. I explained it was to help clarify our discussions for myself. Dad was furious, saying I had crossed a line by recording him. The tension peaked, and my mom suggested we all take a break from the table. I stepped outside to cool off, leaving the door slightly open. I overheard my dad telling my mom that my behavior was unacceptable. Mom defended me, saying we should be more understanding. After a few minutes, I returned to the table, and we all sat in silence. Dinner ended without anyone finishing their meals, and we all paid separately. As we left the restaurant, Dad muttered about my lack of respect. The next day, my mom suggested a family meeting. Honestly, I just feel so lost right now. This whole family meeting thing has me on edge, and I don't even know what to expect. Like, are we going to sit down and talk this out, or is it just going to be more of the same arguing? My mom is always trying to keep the peace, but I don't think that's going to work this time. My dad is really stuck in his ways, and he doesn't get what I'm going through. I don't know, I'm just kind of stressed about it all. If anything big happens, maybe I'll update again, but for now, I'm just trying to take it one day at a time. Am I the idiot for exposing my husband's emotional infidelity in front of his family and friends? I am struggling with the decision on whether or not to leave my marriage of 12 years. My husband and I have a rocky past where we both had very low self-esteem, and we came together in the midst of that part of our lives. We had a common interest in partying and drinking, and we both hurt each other a lot emotionally throughout the early years. We were both young, confused, came from hurtful backgrounds, and thus developed a strong codependency. Since then, we have had 2 beautiful children, and I have made leaps and bounds with my mental health. He has benefited greatly from this, as I believe that me being a happier and more positive person has in turn helped him become happier and more positive as well, although he has yet to tackle his personal mental health issues through therapy or in any other sort of professional manner. As a result of the many years of therapy and growth, I have discovered a much more profound understanding of who I am, my boundaries, and my core values, including the values I would like to see in a partner. I am starting to see that this man, whom I love, is maybe not the man for me. He doesn't align with my values, treads on the edge of some of my boundaries, and I am now experiencing a shift in how I see this marriage. He is a great person. He has tried in all the physical areas I asked for change, such as helping around the house and with the children, but I can't shake this feeling that he is just maybe not my person. I fully believe that we were meant to come together when we did. He is meant to be the father of my children, and our relationship, with all of its quirks and bad parts, has allowed me to grow and become the consciously aware person I am constantly working to be. I wouldn't trade it for the world, but I also feel like it has become stagnant and has run its course. Historically, I have always jumped from relationship to relationship, and I am feeling, for the first time in my life, that I want to be alone. I just want to love myself, and I want to be afforded the chance to be picky and choose a partner out of love and not fear. But I am afraid that simply outgrowing your partner is not a good enough reason to leave them, especially when children are involved. I could probably live the rest of my life this way, although I will always feel like I am not completely fulfilled. Will this extend to my children? Will they see through it? Can I fake it just enough to prevent them from making the same mistakes I did because it is what is familiar to them? Or do I turn their world upside down because their mom wanted to eat, pray, love her life? I know divorce is hard, expensive, and life-changing. I am caught in this space of evaluating risk versus reward. Please give me some insight. Maybe there is a side of this I haven't thought of yet that will put it all into perspective for me. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Solitude sure is a beautiful thing. I miss it as well sometimes. Then I realize now with the life I created that there is no going back unless I am completely selfish. I suppose I can understand being selfish. We only have one quick life to live. For me, the family values and teamwork are more important than my solitude. I think you should get a hobby, take days alone. Maybe you can make the best of both worlds. I love riding my bike. It gives me that bit of alone time. Comment 2. I don't know. This reads like you are throwing a whole lot of big words to justify you being bored in your marriage to a guy who hasn't done anything wrong. Rather than working through your issues together, you just want to drop him. Sounds kind of cold for someone who considers themselves to be so enlightened by their journey. Now, for the update. One day after the last post, I'm at home with my husband and kids. The kids are at least happy about an upcoming trip to a cabin in the woods. We planned it for the weekend. My husband suggested we invite his sister, Lisa, and her husband, Mark, to join us. I didn't want to, but I agreed, knowing that Lisa's always been super critical of me. The night before the trip, I overheard my husband on the phone, whispering and sounding all secretive. I tried to listen in, but couldn't catch anything. During the drive to the cabin, I felt super tense, but I brushed it off as just nerves about the trip. Lisa arrives at the cabin with a big smile, but her gaze quickly darts to me, like she's searching for flaws. The first night, we sat around the fire, and Lisa starts asking all these intrusive questions about my therapy. After the fire dies down, the kids go to bed, and we decide to play board games. My husband teams up with Lisa, leaving me to partner with Mark. Mid-game, Lisa makes this cutting remark about how couples should communicate better, glancing pointedly at me. I tried to shake it off, focusing on the game instead. The next day, while we're hiking, Lisa says she admires couples who are truly in love. That evening, while everyone's busy preparing dinner, I sneak a peek at my husband's phone. I find a series of texts from an unknown number, asking to meet up and discussing personal matters. I confronted him, and he stammers, claiming it's just a work colleague. I'm not satisfied, so I step outside to clear my mind and find Lisa waiting on the porch, this sly smile on her face. Lisa suggests we take a walk, and I reluctantly agree. During the walk, she subtly probes about my marriage, dropping hints that she knows something's wrong. I tried to deflect, but her persistence starts to irritate me. The next day, I'm alone in the kitchen, thinking about my options. I overhear my husband on another phone call, this time mentioning secrets and changing things. I spend the day planning a family game night for later that evening. I secretly invite a few close friends, asking them to arrive at a specific time for support. That night, the family gathers, and I announce a surprise guest joining us virtually for the game. My husband looks puzzled, but I keep a straight face, hinting it's someone special. As the game progresses, I reveal that the special guest is a family friend who knows all about my husband's work colleague. The tension in the room thickens, and his face turns pale as the friend shares a story about his past indiscretions. The atmosphere shifts, and Lisa's smile falters as she realizes things are unraveling. I watch as my husband stumbles through excuses, and the kids look confused. The night ends with my husband storming out, leaving Lisa speechless. I'm currently sitting here in the cabin, surrounded by a bunch of confused kids and an equally shocked Lisa. It's really tense, and I feel like I just dropped a bomb on everybody. I don't regret what I did at all, but I'm worried about my kids and what this means for us. I just hope my husband cools off and comes back to talk things through. I'm really looking for any advice, or just to hear about similar experiences. I know I'm asking for a lot, but I promise I read every comment, so please share your thoughts. Edit. The next morning, my husband returned for a calm conversation. He admitted to emotional infidelity, but claimed it never went further. We decided to separate temporarily, but we'll work on our marriage. Lisa apologized for her actions. The kids are sad but understand. We're prioritizing their well-being during this transition. Am I the idiot for confronting my mother about her blatant favoritism towards my brother? I want to say I'm extremely grateful for everything my parents have done for me. While money is a central issue in this post, I'm upset about the favoritism towards my brother. I am a 29-year-old female, and I have an older brother who is 32 years old. I was also diagnosed with cancer at 26. Crazy circumstances, but my husband, who is 38 years old, and we have been together for 7 years, proposed to me the same day I found out about the cancer, before we knew, so it was a crazy coincidence. We were in the process of closing on our first home. We decided to get married right away and have a courthouse wedding. I never asked for help with money for anything because I don't like any strings attached. I am turning 30 in a few weeks. We have been married for 3 years, and I am 3 years in remission. We are throwing a party at my house, celebrating everything, since we never had a wedding either. It's going to be casual, but we'll have rental games and tables, catering, drinks, and a portable toilet rental. The total cost of the party is going to be expensive, but still under $2,000. My dad, who is 60 years old, offered to pay for the catering, which I thought was really nice. My mom, who is 57 years old, moved to another state a few years ago before my niece was born. She decided she wanted to move back here since she's lonely and wants to see my niece more, and just happens to be closing on a house the week before our party, so she has a lot going on too. I told her things were starting to add up for the party, and she said, if you were having an actual wedding, I would be all in, but with everything going on right now, I can give you $500. I'm grateful for this, and I will take anything anyone wants to give. I don't expect more. What I'm upset about is the pattern that is starting to emerge. When my brother graduated, she bought a condo and let him live there and pay her cheap rent, just enough to cover the mortgage. He also had credit card debt, and she paid it off for him. When I graduated, I had to figure out my own apartment, roommate, etc. on my own. I've been responsible with credit, so I never needed a bailout. When my brother got married, she and my dad both gave them a few $1,000s for the wedding. When my brother bought a house, it was around the same time as we were looking. We announced we were buying a house very shortly after he did, but my mom gave him a large amount of money for his down payment. She didn't expect us to buy a house so soon, and since she just gave my brother money, she couldn't help us the same way. She also didn't offer to help with my cancer treatment since she was dealing with things regarding my grandma. It feels like there's always an excuse to not offer me the same because she doesn't take me into account when she gives my brother things. She doesn't think, will I be in a place to give my daughter the same? We are doing fine financially. But it was how she said that which got me thinking about how this has happened a lot and gets me frustrated. I'm not sure how to approach this with her since she tends to make everything about herself. I need advice. Now, for a few comments before the update. Well, actually, this post did not have any comments. Now for the update. A few days after my birthday party, my mom texts me out of nowhere asking if we can have a family dinner at her place. At first, I'm like, hell no, but then I think maybe this is a chance to calm all this down. So I say yes. The day of the dinner, I spend hours cooking, like I'm preparing for a freaking Michelin star review. I make so much food, it's borderline absurd. Her and my brother pull up with his wife and their newborn, and I'm hit with all the feels. I'm excited to meet the baby, but I'm also like, damn, here we go again. I can tell the atmosphere is off right away. My mom's distracted, and I'm just trying to set the table without dropping anything. As we're eating, my mom won't stop talking about my brother's new promotion. I mean, it's great for him, but I'm like, can I get a little attention over here? I try to bring up my own stuff, like I'm getting a freaking degree in life, but she just brushes it aside like it's no big deal. My brother even makes a joke about taking a big family trip to celebrate his success. How about you take a little trip to a new personality? I mean, seriously, I mentioned my own plans for a weekend getaway, and she interrupts me to talk about how my brother needs a trip even more. I'm like, what does he need a trip for? To go hang out in the condo you bought him? After dinner, I'm like, let me clean up while you guys relax. My brother's wife offers to help, but I'm like, no idiots here, just chill. As I'm doing the dishes, I overhear my mom telling my brother she wants to help him with a down payment for a new house. Like, are you freaking kidding me? My brother walks into the kitchen and asks if I'm okay. I just snap and ask why she never offers me the same support. He looks shocked and tells me I should just ask for it. I'm like, I have asked before, but she always has an excuse. He suggests I be more direct. Like, what do you want me to do? Write her a freaking letter. My mom overhears this and comes in super angry, demanding to know what's going on. I try to explain, but she cuts me off, acting like she's always too busy to help. Then she goes off on me, calling me ungrateful. My brother tries to mediate, but only makes things worse. I'm just done at this point, so I storm out of the house, feeling super frustrated. That night, I get a text from my mom saying she's disappointed in me. I'm like, well, join the club. The next day, I decide I'm done with family gatherings for a while. I can't deal with all this. A week later, my dad calls and asks to meet for coffee. I'm like, sure, let's discuss the latest episode of My Family is a Mess. So we meet up, and he tells me he's concerned about the family dynamics. He spills the tea, saying my mom has been stressed about finances because of my brother's new expenses. I'm like, what new expenses? His freaking condo? My dad suggests a family meeting to discuss everyone's needs, but I'm like, yeah, right. A few days later, my brother calls to chat about the fallout from the dinner. He's like, Mom is really upset, and I feel stuck in the middle. I'm like, welcome to my life, buddy. I agree to talk to my mom again, but I'm not even optimistic at this point. At the next family dinner, the tension is so thick, you could cut it with a knife. My mom starts talking about the trip again, and I'm just like, here we go. I finally speak up, reiterating how I feel about all the favoritism, and she just brushes me off again. This leads to an even bigger blow-up. My brother tries to play peacemaker, but ends up arguing with her about how I'm treated. It's a total circus, and I'm stuck in the middle of the drama. I just feel so drained from all this. Like, I put myself out there, tried to be the bigger person, and what do I get? More of the same. My mom just can't see how messed up this is. My brother's a good guy, but I don't think he really gets it either. I'm just tired of having these dinners that end with me feeling worse than before. I don't even know if I want to go to the next one, honestly. Just thinking about facing that tension again makes me want to hide under my blanket for a week. I'm not sure what to do, but I'll probably update if something major happens. Edit. I decided to take a break from all family stuff for a while. Just needed space to clear my head. No more awkward dinners or tense conversations. Focusing on my own happiness for now. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.